Welcome to another chat with Avid, David Harple and Jack Arnold. Good to see you, Jack. How are you today?
Doing pretty good.
Good. We had some good storms over my way last night, so hopefully you made it through those
Yeah.
on your end.
Yeah, for sure. That
That
time of
that time
year,
of
it's
year,
pouring outside. Yeah.
no doubt about it. Well, if you're joining us today we're going to talk about an interesting topic from our end as financial planners. And it really stems around, is it better to ask good questions or have the right answers? And I'll say from the financial planner side and our industry in general, as advisors, we've really been kind of driven to be the one with all the answers, right? Most people come to us and say, what do you think about this? Or I heard about this, or what's going to happen in the, like, all of these questions that are, we know, you don't, and that's why you're coming to me. However, in our experience now pushing 15 years and really focusing on financial life planning, we are realizing that the answers are actually less important. So let's start off with that. Why do you think that having or asking good questions is actually better than having the right answer?
Well, that's a good question. Um, I, I think the right answer is somewhat subjective. It really depends on your individual situation. So it's hard to say that there's a real right answer. This stuff it's not physics, it's not math. Like there's not a right answer. There's no definitive right answer. Most of these things, whatever it may be, even if it is financial planning and how much money to save and all these different things, they're usually degrees of probability or, there's lots of, I guess you call them soft factors or qualitative
Mm-hmm.
factors that go into decision making. And sometimes most times those things, they don't really like pencil out on a spreadsheet, and it's too difficult or impossible to come up with like the right answer. So a lot of times it's just kind of questioning yourself, how might things be if I did this, and how might they be, and just kind of working through. We've talked about this so many times, is whether you're talking to a friend or a professional or spouse, whatever it is just having an open dialogue to try to come to some conclusions the best that you can, and then work towards that, and then come back
Mm-hmm.
and question it again. So I think I don't know that it's questions, answers, right? Which is better. It's more just like being comfortable with always questioning things and always going back and reviewing that.
Right. And you bring up an interesting point about the answers being subjective. One, it is all of our situations are different, but it also comes back to what are you trying to accomplish, right? We've been doing a number of these. I'd say 6 out of the last 8 of these chats have always kind of stemmed back to what's the vision? What are you trying to accomplish? And really, without having the foundation, some of these tactical answers that you may hear out there that could, or solutions maybe is a better word for it, do they really apply? Like, is it going to get me further ahead towards what I'm trying to accomplish or not? And I think that's where the first question pops into your head, or it should anyway. How might this benefit my situation or our situation?
Yes. Yeah. How might things change if I did A? How might they change if I did B? How might things change if I quit my job and tried to start a business? It's
Right.
more just like it's like a thought experiment. You're just kind of running through scenarios, and you're not so, you know, there's not as much pressure, I guess, to come up with an answer per se.
Right.
Like, should I do this? Well, that's almost definitive. Like it's either yes or no that you should. But most things are very gray. It kind of depends. So you can kind of work through like, well, what would happen if I did this? And it gives you a little bit of leeway to not be wed to whatever answer it is that you come up with. Um, one other point is I think sometimes we've all had this experience where you feel as though your your assumption is that like a friend or somebody is coming to you with advice, and they're saying, they're asking you, oh, Dad, and they're telling you this, whatever it is, the one friend that always just can't seem to find the right person, or they seem to always date the same person over and over again. Oh, whatever. We've all had
Right.
these experiences. Sometimes we're the person doing the asking. So, and you think like they're asking for advice, but a lot of times people are just trying to talk through
Yes.
themselves. That you're just a willing ear. Like And
That's
it's
correct.
difficult to learn the skill of shutting up and just letting people go, because the questioning and going through and working through it yourself is much more valuable um, than just giving an answer, which,
For sure.
sometimes answers feel like it's action. So if I give you an answer, you got to go do something, when sometimes you're not quite even sure of what the next step should be, type of thing. So
No, exactly. You said something earlier that's stuck in my mind when you used the question, like, should I? Well, should I take a new
yes.
job, or should I sell the house because real estate's going crazy? And what we've learned, we're actually both reading a book, A More Beautiful Question, by Warren Berger. Great book, has some good points in there. But in there, it talks about how using the words should and could actually pass judgment, right? And you said that, like, well, should I do this? Now there's like a yes or no type of thing, which could be positive or negative, but it is subconsciously judgment. So a better approach to be, what might it look like if I took a new job? Or what might buying a new home do to my family? Or something like that. So it's more open-ended, thought-provoking, which hopefully leads to more questions.
Right. I think there's we all want answers. Like, we just want an answer. We just want, this is what should be done. We just want an answer to the question. But a lot of times, most really good questions kind of just lead to more questions. And,
Yeah.
which is, it's a little unsettling to not know the answers. But, I can tell you from experience, there are no solidified answers. This is the answer, because things change. So, you're talking about doing some kind of financial plan or start to make steps. We've talked about this many times. The things that you're reaching for today, the things that you think would be fulfilling or important to you, you haven't quite gotten to them yet. And then sometimes when you start to work towards them, you realize that this is not the thing that I was after. My preferences have changed. I've experienced this, and I realized I just don't like this thing in particular. I'd like to do something different. But if you just double down because you've already gone that direction, then you just end up sacrificing something else, like what you're really trying to do. So it's just being comfortable questioning it. It's not questioning yourself in the terms of, why did you do that? Like, you made a mistake.
Right.
It's more just, all right, I'm doing this. Well, I kind of like this, but what if I did something different? How might things be if I tried this other thing instead? And you're not really committed to changing it, but it gives you the ability to think through some of these questions and see if there's, something on the other side that you might want to try.
Right. It's almost like and I think this is another point in the book too, the idea of brainstorming. Let's all get together and we'll throw out all these ideas and we'll try to come up with the best answer of how we can increase sales production or whatever it might be. Maybe you're a business owner and you're trying to, increase profits or something. And it makes a good point is to doing a question storming session, or just throw out questions about maybe a specific topic. Maybe if you're a business owner, it's something to do with growth or employee retention, and let those kind of drive the meeting, because what it'll help do is bring you back to what are we really trying to do? What's the core value here? If you're a business, maybe it's not a statement, but a vision. If you're a person, maybe it's your aspirations. What are we really trying to get at? And then start to think about, okay, so now that we kind of know the why behind it, what if we do this? What if we do that? And approach it a little bit differently, which normally we all, we try to get to the end. Well, how do I do this? And what do you think about this? And we try to do the tactical thing first. And it doesn't mean you can't do that and be successful or accomplish things. But I would say in our experience as planners, we've found that helping people get to that vision really helps drive and motivate them to really do the things they want to do. And I'm having some serious issues with these ear pods, by the way. Sorry. I'm about ready to fall out.
Yeah, I mean, and also, there does come a point where you got to do something. You can't just be questioning things all the time and never making any progress. I mean, that's, obviously any of these extremes. You don't want to be super tactical person that is always trying different tactics and just, shiny thing syndrome, where you're just chasing new things all the time and trying different things and never really dedicating yourself to something. That's one extreme. The other extreme is just being, analysis paralysis where you're not
Yes.
ever really making any progress. So it's not that you never want to make progress. It's that you do want to ask yourself the questions, but at some point you're going to come to the point where I need to start taking some action. This is the action produces information. You start doing something, you start getting feedback, and then you can start make adjustments and say that worked or didn't work, or I need to make adjustments. So there, you do have to take some action. The how, if we're relating this to us, we spend a lot of time trying to come up with, like you said, like the objectives, I guess, the vision of what you're trying to accomplish. What are your values and how does that inform this vision that you're trying to accomplish? Let's get some kind of direction so that we can pull from the bag of tactics to work your way there. I would, those tactics are relatively, I would say they're not worthless. They're low value. There's tons of tactics out there. I mean, an infinite amount. And I could sit here and tell you all day about all kinds of tactics and things that you could do, and maybe you could take those and apply them, but it doesn't really get at the heart of what you're trying to accomplish. So anytime I see something out there which gives like, we're part of a group, and sometimes we'll get these incoming requests from reporters, they're writing stories or something. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times these reporters will say, how should people blah, blah, blah. And it'll be some very specific thing. And my answer is I never respond. Well, I do sometimes, but rarely do I respond, because a lot of times the question is, well, I don't know. It depends. What's their, the person that's reading this, what is their situation? It's almost silly to say this is what somebody should do, because it just depends really on your individual situation. So anytime I see stuff like that, where they're giving general financial advice on television, it's horrible because it just doesn't apply to everybody. Not everybody should max out their 401k. It's not, it seems like it'd be a smart thing to do, but it just depends on your situation and where you are in your life and what you're trying to accomplish. So I just don't like generalized advice kind of just thrown out there.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that is all over the place. Should people refinance their house? We did a big section on refinance, and there's so many questions that need to be asked prior to the yes or no. Should I refinance?
Right.
So
should I max out my 401k? Well, it depends. Let me start asking some questions. That's really where it goes. It's just, so it's hard to do. It's not impossible, though. I think, like we've been saying, the how might I, or, how might things look if, that type of questioning can help. Trying to keep the question somewhat open-ended. We have beaten this to death, but doing this with somebody is a huge help. Spouse, friend, professional, having somebody work through those questions with you is usually a huge help.
It is, because if you think about just our own tendencies, is we all have biases, right? Mm-hmm. Whether it's through experiences, whether it's through knowledge. And if you don't have that, let's say, third party, that other person to kind of kick these things around with, and in my opinion, I agree with you 100%, it's going to be hard outside of having ideas to really then start to take action, because you're going to you can tend to get in your own way based on, things you've done in the past, or things that you're reading, or things that, you just are unsure of. So having somebody else to talk to would be great. And even more so if you had somebody that was a really good listener, that asked purposeful questions, right? Anybody can ask questions to drag out the dialogue, but are the questions helping you get further to what really you're trying to maybe wrestle with, or articulate in the conversation? I think that's a big part too.
Yeah. And then when you do come to some kind of conclusion, I mean, there's definitely an end point. What are the action steps to take, and having some kind of somebody can help you plan through that, and, that kind of stuff. There's also like if you look back, so obviously this particular point in time, there's all these kind of past choices that you've made that have kind of led you to this particular point, but there is a million scenarios where you make a different choice and you end up in a different place. So everything's kind of come to this head, but right now, looking out, there's a million different choices to be made, and those choices will lead you in different directions depending on the choices that you make. So evaluating what choices do I want to make, how might it look if I went this way, or how might it look if I went that way, is to try to narrow yourself down to where you're trying to end up as much as you possibly can. So you're always going to be asking those questions.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because just last night, Lucilia, my daughter's about 4.5, and we've been reading this book. This is probably the third night in a row. Now she wants to read this book. What would Danny do? Or what should Danny do, rather? What should Danny do, right? He has to make a
Right.
choice. And it runs through these scenarios. Like he gets to the breakfast table and he knows that his younger brother is eating breakfast on his favorite superhero plate. Well, he has the alphabet plate, but he already knows the alphabet. So should Danny throw a tantrum and yell at his brother and steal the plate, or should he just say it's not a big deal and thanks mom, when are we going to the park type of thing? And it's interesting because Lucilia, now that she wants to read it, she actually wants to know what the other things are. So she'll deliberately say, well, I think he should throw a tantrum. So then he throws a tantrum, pushes the plate off the table, orange juice goes everywhere. It goes into another scenario, and now his brother is yelling at him for doing something at a car little track they're making. So what should Danny do? And then you can see her pause to think, I know what I'm perceiving as a dad. I know that if Danny reacts in a poor way, that's not a good outcome. And I also know this is the right answer. So then she'll choose the right answer, and then it's like kind of a happy ending. So anyway, the book is pretty interesting and follows the same exact mindset that you're describing for adults, yet with a little one. Is there's endless
Yeah.
options.
Yeah. I mean, I would throw the plate in the air and tell him, don't you ever touch my plate again. But yeah, there's,
right.
I think it's funny. This called What Should He Do? But yeah, those are like, what would happen if, like, what might it look like if I went over there and just threw the plate in the air and like hit him over the head with the plate? And what might it look like if I just kind of sat down and ate it on a different plate? Obviously, it's a little kid's book, but those are like choices. How might it look if I did this? And how would that play out? Let me kind of run through in the mental exercise of thinking these things through a little bit. So it's uncomfortable to not have answers, but you're just not going to have answers sometimes. You just got to ask more questions. Yeah. Eventually you'll come to some kind of conclusion of action that you should take, but sometimes you just got to keep, asking questions. What am I doing? Why am I here? What am the whole point of all the stuff that I'm doing? What if I did something different? How would that look? So
it seems counterproductive to not have answers, but I agree with you. Sometimes that's okay, and sometimes that's for the best. The questions will lead you to ultimately where you know where you want to be, where you want to get to. So
yeah,
I think it's a great place to end. Jack, good chat here on a cloudy Wednesday.
Yeah. All right, Dave. See ya.
Talk to you later.